April 22nd, 2025 is the last day that I binged and purged. I've been struggling with bulimia for 15 years, and I'm finally removing the shame around it, and I'm ready to talk about it. Now, while I've been sober, as I like to call it for a lack of a better word, for 2 months, it's been years in the making, honestly. I always wanted to let go of this habit, let go of this addiction, and I always fought with it, and I always pretended that it was no big deal, that I had control over it, when in fact it had all the control in my life. I'm recording this video on June 24th, so it's officially 2 months and 2 days since I last binged and purged, and while it's been 2 months, I gotta say, this whole healing process took way longer than this. You know, it wasn't just like a day where I woke up and I was like, okay, today's the day I'm gonna stop binging and purging. No, it was years of work, honestly. There's a lot of contributors that allowed me to get to this point. So I'm not gonna share with you exactly what it was because I honestly don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it was a whole process of me trying to understand myself, understand where was this coming from, learning about psychology, about sort of human nature, and a lot of inner reflection and self-reflection on all of the things that I've gone through, traumas, for a lack of a better word, and all of that that contributed to my bulimia and that eventually led me to a place where I can talk about it. Now, a huge part of this journey and part of this, I don't want to say recovery and like letting go totally of bulimia, because I believe like any addiction, it will always stay with me. Kind of like with alcoholism, this desire to drink will always be there. You're just fighting it, you're finding other ways to cope that are not destructive. So a huge part of what allowed me to not binge and purge for the last 2.5 months was actually talking about it. So I started a blog on Substack where I talk about it. I share different kind of stories on there. Some of them are personal, some of them are extremely personal, but it's all about my journey and how my life looked like with and without bulimia. Now, a huge contributor to that was actually listening to a lot of stories of people who battled alcoholism and their life, and just hearing their honest, raw stories. I listened to the Rich Roll podcast, which I highly recommend. It's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. And as a former addict himself, he brings on a lot of people who talk about these things. I mean, of course, it's not the only thing they talk about in this podcast, but there's a lot of talk about alcoholism and how people's lives have changed and what contributed to their recovery and so on. And it's been fascinating to listen to these stories, and it made me wonder why I cannot find stories of people who battled bulimia who are talking about it from this humane perspective and less about the food. Because I'll give you an example. Of course, there are many podcasts about bulimia recovery and eating disorder recovery in general, which I'm highly grateful for. I listened to these podcasts myself many times. But for me, they were not the one who contributed to sort of me beginning to heal my binging and purging. It was rather these stories of people who battled alcoholism, because in these particular stories that I heard, it was more of from people trying to understand themselves, less about the addiction itself, but more about them as human beings, them, what they wanted in life, people that they wanted to be, and so on. And if you're an addict, you know that when you have an addiction, this is your entire life. So like for 15 years, yes, I was, working, I immigrated to a new country by myself, I did all these things, but there was always, like, bulimia was always there. It was a huge part of my day-to-day. Like, I didn't do, like, when I could be out making friends or having hobbies and so on, I was at home engaged in binging and purging. And so there's a lot of me who I lost along the way that now I am getting back to, and I'm discovering myself all over again. And this is what I was lacking in these stories in the podcast that I was listening to. It was more about, food and nutrition and exercise and all of these things, which of course has a huge place, but for me personally, I've never really related to, because funny enough, as a bulimic, I was actually quite healthy. If you can picture that, I'll just explain really quickly how it was like for me. So I was always aware of how it's like to eat healthy, that it's important to exercise. So I exercised ever since I was, I think, 19. I exercised regularly. Of course, it looked very different throughout the years, but I always had exercise in my life, and also I was always eating healthy. My binging and purging was never about just having an empty feeling in my stomach. It was more about a habit of like self-destruction that I needed to engage in. So I would eat breakfast all the time. I never actually, like, when I eat my healthy meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I never like purged those. What I purged was usually extra food that I took in as a habit. So I would eat healthy, and then the food that I binged and purged on was actually food that wasn't really healthy, like, you know, pancakes, ice cream, all of these things that I love and I couldn't have. So it was more from a restrictive point of view rather than just having an empty stomach. So this is, I feel like, why the story that I went through, I couldn't find it anywhere else when I was listening to stories about bulimia. So I found that connection listening to people who struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction, because there was something missing inside of them and they were filling that void with, you know, the drugs and alcohol. And for me, it was the same with food. I had like separate sort of ideas of food. So it was like the food that I eat every day, the healthy food, the food I actually liked eating, and then there was the bad food, the food that I needed to dispose of, and it was sort of part of this huge secret that was called bulimia. I never also, like, you know, binged and purged to the point where I couldn't function. I always, when I was in university, I attended classes, I went to work. There were, of course, a couple of times that I like canceled plans because I'd rather binge and purge instead. But it was never from a place of like, I cannot handle my life. Like, I paid my bills and all of that, and I put myself through university. And like I said, I immigrated to a new country by myself, so it was never like a stopping factor from anything that I wanted to accomplish, but rather it was, like I said, me sort of slowly losing myself throughout the years, if that makes sense. But like for the things that really mattered to me, I was there and I did them regardless. I would also add that I went to doctor's appointment throughout the years for different kind of things, never about bulimia, like nobody knew about it, but they never, like, you know, told me, oh, something here looks off, like, could you be bulimic or something like it never came up, you know, like my blood tests always tested well and all of that, knock on wood. So I'm just telling you this from the perspective of you are looking for somebody who is talking about this that you feel you can relate to. So I want to tell you my stories for you to decide if you relate to this or not, if that makes sense. I don't know about you, but whenever I listen to somebody that I can really relate to them, really relate to their stories, that's when sort of the change starts to happen within me. So it happened to me with a couple of people that I listened to actually, that I'm like, wow, what you're saying right now is exactly what I went through. It wasn't like, you know, that bad, but I can relate to this, you know, I can see myself in this, and like if you did it, then I can do it too. And this is why I'm sharing my story, because I want to show you that if I did it, like after 15 fucking years, then you can do it too. So with that very long introduction, I just want to say what you can expect from this channel moving forward. First of all, I'm not going to delete anything that I created so far, even though it's not really related anymore, because I think that you can still get something out of it. And because I want to give, of course, gratitude to all the people that went on the podcast, and because I don't know, maybe one day I will get back to the topic of entrepreneurship and all of that I was talking about, but right now this is really not where my head is. Like I said, I wanna get back to myself. I wanna get to know myself again. And one thing that's been really helping, something that I used to do as a kid and I recently went back to, was writing. So I've been writing on Substack, sharing my story. I share their personal stories and really personal stories. And the personal stories are for free, so anybody can subscribe and read them for free. I publish one every week. The really personal stories are paid, so you're gonna have to upgrade if you wanna read those, also once a week. If you also upgrade, you will be able to comment and join the conversation, and also we're gonna have a monthly meetup where we can just, you know, connect, support each other, discuss different things, and just, you know, be human together. And so this channel is gonna be basically me reading the stories that I share for free. So like it's gonna be, I think, a week delay between each story that I publish on Substack and then the video. So again, if you wanna like get a glimpse of those earlier, then please subscribe to my Substack to get access to that. So the videos are gonna be just me reading. I think I will put like some B-rolls on top of the videos so you can just, you know, enjoy something other than my face. So that's that. And like I said, I'm gonna be talking about anything and everything that I feel like, honestly. I just don't want you to expect, this is not like because I've been following a bunch of people who talk about ED recovery, and they talk a lot about like hunger cues and all of that. This is not this kind of channel. First of all, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach, but this is gonna be less about coaching and more about me going through recovery and just talking about it, talking about anything that might come up, and basically discovering my humanity again, discovering my personality, who I am, what I want to do, and all of that. And as you can tell, I don't have a really clear idea of what exactly it is that I'm gonna be sharing, but the main thing that you can expect from this channel and from my writing on Substack is the truth. I promise nothing but the truth, nothing but vulnerability, self-exploration, reflection, and I hope that my stories and my experience and anything that I share will help you on your journey with any eating disorder that you may have. Yes, I'm sharing my story, and yes, this is me sort of selfishly talking about my own experience because it's helping me with my recovery, but I also really hope that it's gonna help you as well in your recovery. And I hope that you know that you can reach out to me at any time. If you have any questions, you can either send me a message on Substack or find me on Instagram. Everything's linked below. Just if you want to talk to somebody about this, because I know that I didn't talk to anybody about this for 15 years and I desperately wanted a space where I could talk about this. So if you're somebody like me who, you know, been through life, you've done things, bulimia is not like, it's a habit that you hate, but it's not something that is keeping you from living, if that makes sense. Even though like now when I'm saying these words, of course, it kept me from living to my fullest potential, but it didn't inhibit me from doing things, if that makes sense. So if you're somebody like that, whose bulimia has been in your life and it's becoming a status quo, but you really hate the fact that it's a status quo in your life, then again, you're not alone. I've been there, I know what it's like, and I'm here for you. So if you want to talk about this, again, feel free to reach out. All right, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Stay safe. Take care of yourself, and for what it's worth, I want you to know that I believe in you and that you will get through this, okay? All right, see you soon.